bullet list of what to talk about. So, Donna Kennedy, I have to give her two names, her nickname after her stage name. Her stage name followed by her nickname. She's worth $2 million. She married her son, not on paper because I can't find any record of that, but in practice. So she passes him off as her husband using fraudulent, it's basically fraudulent identity. Identity theft or fraudulent IDs that they're masquerading under, false names, false birth dates. Now, I did find a record of her, or somebody by her stage name. I think it's Roos or Reese or something. And there used to be another name attached to it that I knew about that was hyphenated, so she had like two names. Anyway, there was a record of somebody by that stage name who used to live in Philadelphia, and so I'm wondering if she's fleeing something from Philadelphia, some sordid past, I don't know. Anyway, she did, or maybe her recent past in Hollywood. She did two movies. One cost an arm and a leg to buy because it's done as a study piece. The director sells it at a very high price, like over $100 on his website. And she played one of many, a bevy of women. I think they were hookers or something, the characters that these women were portraying. I can't remember exactly. Anyway, then there's the second movie that you can get on Amazon called Blind Sight. And there are alternate names for it, but that's the one that the DVD is being sold as. It has Robert Vaughn from The Man of U.N.C.L.E. fame on there. He plays the bad guy. And Eric Estrada plays her boyfriend, her former boyfriend. And she goes and meets with him and talks to him and then gets massacred and assassinated or whatever, and murdered in his driveway. And it in slow motion. And she was very thin, so it was before she put on weight. I think it was done in the 1990 decade. I can't remember exactly. Let's see. So her so-called husband by the name of Kevin is her firstborn son. Owen is her second biological son. And they are all three of them get their Connolly name, not from Kevin, but from William Michael, or sometimes he swaps it, Michael William Connolly, who lives up the street in Granada Hills from her, and it's just a few blocks from them. He's got a family of his own. He's on Birchner Street, Birchner, off of Gothic Avenue, just north of Rinaldi Boulevard in the San Fernando Valley. And he's been dabbling in identity fraud as well as her, because they do have a marriage recording in Las Vegas. I think it was around 1980, something or other. And so she used her nickname, Donna L. Kennedy, as her maiden name, which she uses to this day. She passes herself off as Donna L. Kennedy, born on the 4th day of September. Now, it turns out there's over a half a dozen people I found dating back to 1939 of the exact same first name, middle initial, and last name. Some of them, the middle name is Lynn, Lynn, and I found two people whose middle name was spelled out, and they both had the same middle name. Everybody else, it's simply the same middle initial, the letter L as in Larry, or as in Louisiana. Now, and they're all born in the 4th day of some month of the year. In her case, it's September. This is what's so odd. May, June, different months of the year. So I think it's a scam or a scheme. I don't know. If you want to be nice, you could say it's police protection, but I have no idea. Accessorize, now that she's got my son, and she wants to continue to get foster care, but she wants to pass him off as her son. Now, there is a record in Las Vegas, Nevada, of a Kyle Anthony Connolly whose birth was recorded on the 30th of November, 2010, about half a year after he was actually born, but recorded to be born at a hospital. I think it's called California Hospital. I'm not sure the name of it, but it's in downtown Los Angeles on the 10th day of May. It was Latino Mother's Day, which is also the birthday of that famous dancer. What's that guy's name? Oh, Astaire, Fred Astaire. Yeah, it's the birthday of Fred Astaire. Anyway, now, this person she did marry on record, Michael William Connolly, or William Michael Connolly. I basically did research, and I came up with a Michael Connolly, Michael D. as in David Connolly, who lived during World War II. So he would have been my father's age. And this guy wasn't old enough to be that. But this guy claims he has somebody, or the records, the people on the internet who tally up all these records, they claim that he at one time he had somebody living with him. No, he still has. That's right. He still has somebody living with him who's like 125 years old, and Grossman is the guy's last name. Now, obviously, I doubt he has somebody that old. I think what happened was he stole his identity, Michael D. Connolly's identity, changed the middle name to William, and then after I first posted my expose several years ago, he swapped his middle name with his last name, so now he prefers to be called Michael William Connolly. But be that as it may, he's in his 80s or something, or 90s, and if he's still alive, I haven't checked. But anyway, this other fellow, Michael D. Connolly, as in D as in David, he built a cafe, a nightclub, on Lankershim Boulevard in North Hollywood, just before he went off to war, and left it with his wife. And when he got back, he was so dissatisfied because of the war, or I don't know what, I can't remember what it was, so he left her the restaurant and went off. Now, he had been working in the movie studio, I think as a set designer or something, so that's why he was able to, he had such an interesting architecture that he made it a barrel, a wine barrel. The whole building is the shape of a wine barrel. And this Spanish lady, a Spanish flamenco dancer, acquired it, and she was run over by a limo in 2009, and people were telling her she's got to give it up to the county or something as a landmark. At that time, La Caña, she named it La Caña. I forget, it was called something else when the guy built it, but she renamed it La Caña, which means the stick. It's a certain type of dance, a flamenco dance that you do over and around a stick, and La Caña means the stick. Well, the following year in 2010, she died, and so the county acquired it because they'd had their sights set on it for ages. And I went and visited the place. It was kind of run down when I saw it. She was living in it, but on the top floor, but she wasn't keeping it up anymore, and she wasn't having customers anymore, so it was kind of boarded up at the time. And you can find articles on it, and it may be in business again. They may have revived it. In any case, it was kind of fishy. It was all wrapped up in this, and all this identity theft. Well, I did a stakeout in front of Michael Williams' home, Michael William Connolly, and I did it with my ex, and we stayed overnight. I waited for him to come out, and I realized it wasn't him. But the police showed up just as we were leaving. And my son's foster mother, at the next visitation that I got to visit my son, she was so embarrassed. She had embarrassment written all over her, like you could have marked her up with a crayon or something, a big magic marker. She wore all her emotions on her sleeve. So I knew she knew that I had showed up there, and I knew that he was significant in some way in her life, but I didn't know how. See, I wasn't able to figure it out until recently, several years ago. It took me many years to figure out what was so peculiar about Kevin Connolly, her so-called husband. He was so happy, and I couldn't put my finger. Why is he so happy? His countenance, as we say in biblical terminology, was so unique, different than everybody else on the fourth floor of the lobby of Children's Court in Monterey Park outside of downtown LA. It was uncanny. He had a different countenance than everybody else. I mean, the physical form of the countenance was happiness, but there was something else to it. There was something that just begged the question that there's something mysterious behind that. happiness that's very peculiar and eccentric and unique to him, and no one else shares it. Well, it turns out he's the firstborn son of Donna L. Kennedy. The nickname, I'll look it up what her real name is. I forget what it is. I'll put it in the description. And if you look up the real name, she's worth $2 million. I think I said that already last time I checked. So they've been passing him off as her husband, even though he's her firstborn child. So let's see, what else can I say about them? So, that's more than bigamy, although it's not legal bigamy because she's not legally married to him. She simply passes him off and everybody believes it. There's probably recorded in some church record or on their Bible or some excuse, obviously no blood test, right? God forbid. That's the one thing like Dracula can't stand sunlight or something, or garlic or whatever. These people would not be able to stand up to a blood test. No way. Unless the blood test was fraudulent, But a valid done by 3 independent parties, all of them private. It would have to be some bigwig government agency to be able to pull off the heist of fraud, from multiple private blood testing, biomeds to do a genetic scan to identify the markers, to identify how closely are these two people related. Anywho, so let's see. What else? I think I'm going to just use this as my post. Sorry for the background noise. I'm driving my Navigator. Well, I'll turn off my Navigator. How's that sound? Now that you've listened to me. Okay. Let's see. What else? I think I've covered everything. Yeah, so she's getting free medical care and foster care money, despite the fact that she already adopted my son legally. And she's threatened my trustee. Well, here's the payoff, see. She threatened my trustee that I'm a felon because I tried to contact my son before I went through legal channels. And when I started to go through legal channels, my trustee refused to fund the matter because my son's foster mother threatened her. Well, 3 weeks is the window to stand good on that threat. And that was years ago. That was 6 years ago. So I'm not a felon anymore because she refused to act on it. Double jeopardy, You can't do it twice. A little too late for that. I got that from a lawyer, that advice, so I don't have to worry about being threatened to be a felon. Unfortunately, being stigmatized as a schizophrenic and never going for a second opinion and allowing my mother to get away with the fraud, because I did complain to her, hey, Mom, this is fraud, and she never responded to my criticism. She simply said, oh, all the Bel-Air mothers do it for their children. One of her friends, Sheila Greenberg, did it for her son. And that's it. And he probably needed it because he probably is schizophrenic. But I'm not schizophrenic. What no one in my family will admit to, if you gather the evidence together, it points in an entirely different direction. We were alcoholics, raw food vegans fasting on a raw food vegan diet for 10 years, but we were alcoholics because my father never got to be an engineer. He was a mere draftsman, a blue-collar job, and supporting the family as a single breadwinner, he bought all of his produce and nuts and seeds in bulk at the open-air market on Western Avenue, I think it's called, in L.A., and stored it, stockpiled it in the garage. Now, maybe in the wintertime they could get away with it, but in the summer, because they had no walk-in freezer or refrigerator to put all that stuff in, or to buy it in small amounts like the wealthy do nowadays when they want to go on a raw food vegan diet. It's so chic now, but back in the 50s, they started in 48, they got married, and they separated in 1960, and then he died in 61. So that's something like 12 years. Although the first year they included baked potatoes as a transitionary diet. And they followed Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System and his Rational Fasting, the 2 books. And I know that because I picked up the exact same books as a teenager and started fasting on that diet. And then my mother substitute teaches and with lunch and has lunch with me at my high school one day and says, we used to eat like that, and could have hit me with a brick. I had no idea because the family never talked about it because they were so upset that my father died because they just figured he was, taking good care of himself, but he didn't. He was forlorn over the separation from his family and the banality of his job. He never got into acting like he could have and should have because he certainly had the looks. He could have been a print model, a runway model. That guy was really good looking. His mugshot, I've seen his mugshot. It doesn't exist anymore, as far as I know, unless somebody like my brother took it and kept it. But that guy had beautiful golden wavy hair, cleft chin, not like Kirk Douglas, but it was cleft, a good German square jaw, because he was born of German parents. So, the guy had fantastically good looks, but he never went through with it. So, let's see. So, back in that day, we were alcoholics because everything was fermenting. And we had no starch in the diet. Everything was sugar-based for carbs. And my mom said she made a lot of carrot grape juice, 50-50 blend in the Champion juicer. And they extensively drank a lot of that all day long. She also made kale salads and, raw kale salads and various things. Very interesting dishes, of course, but everything slightly fermented. And I met somebody at a potluck. Kobe Segenthaler was well known in the animal rights community of LA when she was alive, and I became friends with her because her birthday was like very close to my mom. She was like a year off. She was a year younger. So when my mom died, it was like a hole in my life, so I became friends with her and hung out with her. And she'd have these potlucks, and everybody would show up with a vegan potluck dish. And one guy showed up, and he had been an orphan as a child. And he was an alcoholic. And yet he was a raw food vegan. He simply crafted his dishes in such a way that he always got his fix and yet still maintained the raw food diet. And I'm telling you, his breaths reeked of alcohol like you wouldn't believe. And he was woozy, and he told me his life story, yet he was a raw food vegan. So you see, it is possible to be an alcoholic on a raw food vegan diet. But in my case, in my family's case, they didn't know. Now, when my mother hired a psychiatrist to stigmatize me, to shut me up, because my mother and my brother can't stand honesty, and eventually I was no longer kept my mouth shut. I started to complain about the fraud and whatnot, the things I found wrong in our household. Up till then, I had kept my mouth shut, and when my mom separated from her third husband, she was very distraught, and I started to convey with her, hey, dude, I am grieving because I gave up a life because of you, so that you could have a life ignorant of what it was costing me. I kept my mouth shut and I gave up a normal life. That's the only reason. See, they think I'm schizophrenic because I don't work. Well, yep. No, because I can't work. No, I didn't want to work because I didn't have to, and my brother was jealous about that. Now I'm working. A blue-collar job, but nonetheless, I have to survive because my trustee cut me off when my son's foster mother threatened her with charging me with a felony. So I'm on my own, kind of, pretty much for good now. So let's see, where was I? So when my mother hired a psychiatrist to shut me up by stigmatizing me, it turns out when you're labeled a schizophrenic, it's like a felon. Because there's no statute of limitations. You lose your civil rights in court. You don't have civil rights like everybody else does. As a schizophrenic, you have 0 for life, and the record follows you. Even though it's only valid in the county of Los Angeles, the record follows you wherever you go. Any state of the union, it follows you. I've already gone through this, so I know as a certainty. Anybody can look it up. It's public record. Now, they do a very interesting thing. Symptomatically, There was absolutely no distinction between a schizophrenic and an alcoholic. The symptoms are exactly the same. The problem to the psychiatrist had to pick it apart. Which is this patient that I'm examining? Which is he? Is he schizophrenic or is he an alcoholic? Well, it's really simple. From our records, it's no big deal. Could you answer a few questions? Oh, sure. Do you drink? Do you smoke? Do you take drugs? Oh, no, none of the above. I'm a teetotaler. What did I know? In hindsight, I'd say I'm keeping my mouth shut and I'm not speaking because I have no attorney present who would tell me that everything I say can and will be used against me in some court of law at some future date. And guess what? It was multiple occasions, multiple times. So I'm now stigmatized with a schizophrenia label, paranoid schizophrenic type 2 episodic, because they didn't know what else to do with me. They wanted to shut me up. And you can't get welfare by claiming your son was born an alcoholic of an alcoholic mother for the first 2 trimesters of his gestation, and that I would have miscarried at the end of the second trimester had she not switched back to a cooked food diet, because the naturopathic doctor who was acting as her neonatal care at the time advised her, hey, you better start eating some cooked food here because your last pregnancy miscarried. So it's probably going to happen again. And so she took the gal's advice, started eating cooked food, and it created a rift between my parents. My father was kicked out of the bedroom and slept on the couch. And so when his parents came from back east to visit, it was the first time they couldn't sleep on the couch, and they had to go sleep at a hotel and wonder what the hell is going on here. Our kids can't get along, but the two families are getting along just fine. Despite and this is the irony, my mother married my father despite her father, because it was a mixed marriage. My mother was a Jew, and my father was a Christian Scientist raised by a Presbyterian minister. A minister. He'd go around and start churches in towns that did not have any, and then move on to the next town. That was my uncle, my father's brother, was a Bible scholar at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut. He knew and he could read, write, and speak some Aramaic, Greek, Latin, Hebrew, German, English. The guy was a wunderkind, a true wunderkind, and a big, magnanimous heart of a guy. Oh my God, the guy was the most sweetie guy you can imagine. Anyway, he was the baby. My father was the older of the 2 brothers. Anyway, so the only way to shut me up was to claim that I'm schizophrenic, when in reality, I'm an alcoholic. And that's my default condition. My brother grew out of it because he only had to grow up that way as a child. He did not have to grow up that way as a pre-birth fetus. Me, on the other hand, I got it before birth, or before my 3rd trimester of gestation, and so I never got it. I was never raised that way. And we separated when I was a baby, and then my father died within a year, and before the divorce was finalized and made legal. So we were never legally divorced, my parents. So I got disability, Social Security disability from a deceased parent. And my brother did too, but we spent the money for living expenses while mine was squirreled away, and I got to use it for private school education in Iowa, a nice meditation college for 2 years. But my brother had to go to work. The minute they separated, when he was 10, he's been working his whole life until recently he's retired. So he's probably a little jealous that I got off easy. But his eldest son was really hurt that his father had a nudist for a brother, because my eldest nephew has a tiny penis, or at least he used to. So he was very self-conscious of his penis. Meanwhile, his younger brother has a humongous penis. Anyway, so there's all kind of family jealousies, rivalries. It's basically an inside job in which I got smeared. And when my ex and I were going to classes, I forget the name of it, it's a certain school of thought when you go for certain classes to help you with the pregnancy. This was the first time she said that she had ever had classmates who lost their child to child confiscation process. And it was only because of a legal snag. I gave up a documentation that was supposed to remain private within my psychiatrist's files, and my brother wanted it and said, oh, it's for my files, it's just for the record. It's lovely when they say that. When police or anybody says that, now I know. Anytime they say that, oh, it's just for our records, you better throw out some red flags, not orange flags, not amber flags, but red flags, because that's really serious stuff. Or when the judge says, oh, it's just for our records, can you tell us your social security number before we begin this hearing? You better shut your mouth. Anytime they say it's just for our records, it's no big deal. It is a big deal. You can count on it. Anyway, what else? So there's a very personal posting here at Podbean. It's very personal, and I've named names already. Donna L. Kennedy, but that's her nickname. Now, Blind Sight is the movie. So, while I wonder if I could do this while I'm recording. I'll attach the two files. I'll do another audio file, and I'll attach it. I'll get you her true stage name, which is probably her birth name and her true maiden name, but, who would know? Because she's been lying all this time. Let's see what else. Oh, yes, the address, her address, and the address of William Michael Connolly, who lives up the street. Those are the two main people in this game, shall we say. And then her true name. So you can look her up. And you can buy her movie on Amazon. Blind Sight. Well, you can do that anyway. Look up Eric Estrada, Blind Sight, and you'll find her movie. It's a short scene. It's not very long, but you'll be able to see and identify, oh yeah, that's her. If you saw her now in real life, you'd be able to see, oh yeah, that's pretty close enough. She just gained some weight and got a little older, that's all. Let's see what else. Yeah, I think that's it for this segment of this audio posting.